One thing, Jim, that I think may be a legitimate concern here is the lineup and the lack of depth. Because even on a day like today where you actually had Lindor and Alonso performing at a high level, and I didn't, look, those guys have been consistent throughout their careers. There's no reason to believe that they won't continue that, but they get nothing else. There's no production anywhere else. So would you be concerned about, and I get, Nimmo, Marte should be okay too, the bottom half of that lineup, though, don't you have legitimate concerns about this team keeping up with a team like the Braves who don't lose again?
Yeah, well, I will say this, yes, to the part of the depth of the lineup. Vogelbach, we saw, last year, he has not been good so far. And even when he gets on base and he gets thrown out a second, trying to stretch the other night, that doesn't help. Escobar is off, we know, to a slow start. We know Canna's off to a slow start. One or two of those guys, I was expecting them to be fine, and I think one of them will. I'll bet more on Canna at the moment. And then, you hear the news about Beatty. Luckily, it's not anything serious, but he's going to be out for a little bit. So that was your depth piece, going to, protect you in case Escobar was down. Or if Vogelbach was down, he could slide Escobar into the DH spot and bring up Beatty. So I'm a little bit concerned that not only those guys right now are not productive, but your main guy in the minor leagues that you were expecting a jolt of energy, he's down right now at the moment, too.
Yeah, it's like a lineup right now that Jim is describing, and kind of what he's saying, it needs that jolt, right? And that's, we've actually talked about with the Yankees, how Volpe has kind of been that jolt for their lineup. It feels like Beatty could be that for the Mets at this point, just a new face, a new bat, someone who is hitting really well to start the minors. You hear that he's day-to-day, so that's positive, especially considering when you saw his at-bat and how he reacted to it. But overall, I think time, you just kind of have to wait and see how things pan out. You don't have much time sometimes for these players because you want to start hitting and you want to get off to as good of a start as you can. But that's really right now where I'm looking is how short of leash do you have for certain guys and how much more do you want to see until you do need to have just more hitting consistently throughout the lineup. We've talked about it before going into this season that when you're pursuing a postseason run, you want to win a World Series, your stars have to be your stars. The guys you expect to perform, they have to perform. And so right now you're just not seeing that consistently, at least yet from these guys. But the hope is we're starting to see that the guys you think will show up well.
So I don't like to bring up sort of payroll. I don't think it's like, oh, they spent all this money, so we are allowed to get mad at them for not playing well. But I do think it's, to your point about the lineup, it feels like a really shallow lineup for such an expensive team. It's sort of like, where are those pieces? And I know they're, Verlander and Scherzer, right. Verlander on the DL, but it does feel, that lineup feels shallow, especially Alonso, someone who's hitting, is a homegrown guy. And it's like, it does feel almost lacking that star power.
I also think the big picture, which we get into, throughout the course of the year, the way that they built the team, choosing to invest a lot of money in the two older guys atop that rotation, that was questionable coming off of last year, where they had the pitching lined up the way that they wanted to, got swept in Atlanta, lost in the wild card. They doubled down on that format, and so far, with Verlander out, with Scherzer not looking so good, the lineup being thin, it doesn't look like it's working out just yet.